Move her to the back. Actually, no, just wheel her out of the frame entirely. She ruins the aesthetic. My mother said those words at my sister's baby shower while I sat 3 feet away, pretending I couldn't hear. 27 family members were arranging themselves for a photo, and I was being erased like a smudge on a camera lens. I was 31 years old, and I had stopped crying about it years ago. But what my mother didn't know was that her own granddaughter had been watching. And 15 years later, at the most important event of her life, my niece Sophie would make my mother pay for every single photo I was cut out of. My name is Natalie Brennan, and I've been in a wheelchair since I was 16 years old. It was a car accident, a drunk driver running a red light on a rainy November evening in Minneapolis. My father was driving. He walked away with a broken collarbone. I never walked again. The doctors said I was lucky to be alive. They said the spinal cord damage at T10 could have been higher, could have taken my arms too. They said I would adapt, that millions of people live full and meaningful lives with paraplegia, that this wasn't an ending, it was just a different kind of beginning. My parents said I was a burden. Oh, they never used that word exactly. They were too careful for that. But I saw it in my mother's eyes every time she looked at my wheelchair. I heard it in my father's sigh every time they had to find an accessible entrance. I felt it in the way my sister Danielle started keeping her distance, like my disability was somehow contagious. Before the accident, I was the golden child. Straight A student. Varsity swimmer. Homecoming court nominee. I had a boyfriend, a scholarship offer, a future that sparkled with possibility. After the accident, I was an inconvenience. The scholarship disappeared, the college said they couldn't accommodate my special needs. The boyfriend lasted 3 months before he admitted he just couldn't handle it. And my family? My family learned to pretend I didn't exist. The photo exclusion started at Christmas, 8 months after the accident. We were at my grandmother's house in St. Paul, surrounded by aunts and uncles and cousins who hadn't seen me since before the accident. Everyone was being aggressively cheerful, complimenting my hair, asking about physical therapy, telling me how brave and inspiring I was. Then my Aunt Judith pulled out her camera. Family photo time. Everyone gather by the fireplace. I wheeled myself toward the group, finding a spot near the edge where I wouldn't block anyone. But before I could settle in, my mother appeared at my side. Natalie, honey, why don't you sit this one out? The lighting isn't great over here, and we don't want you to be uncomfortable. I looked at her, confused. I'm fine, Mom. I want to be in the picture. Her smile tightened. The thing is, sweetheart, the wheelchair takes up so much space. We won't be able to fit everyone in the frame. Maybe next time we can do a separate photo of just you. She said it so sweetly, so reasonably, that I almost believed she was doing me a favor. I wheeled myself back, out of the frame, and watched my family smile for the camera without me. That was the first time. It wasn't the last. Over the next 20 years, I was erased from every family photograph. Thanksgiving dinners, birthday parties, graduation celebrations, anniversary milestones, I attended them all, and I appeared in none of the pictures. My mother had a dozen excuses, each one more creative than the last. The wheelchair creates an awkward height difference. We're doing a standing photo this time. The background is too busy, you'll get lost in it. We'll take a nice portrait of you later, just you and your beautiful smile. The portrait never happened. The inclusion never came. My sister Danielle went along with it without question. She had always been my mother's echo, agreeing with whatever narrative was convenient. When she got married, I wasn't in the wedding party. When she had her children, first Sophie, then the twins Emma and Oliver, I was present at the hospital but absent from the birth announcements. I existed in my family's life, but not in their memory. When future generations looked back at the Brennan family albums, they would see no evidence that I had ever been there at all. The only person who ever questioned it was Sophie. From the time she was old enough to ask questions, my niece noticed that something was wrong. She was 5 years old when she tugged on my sleeve at Easter brunch and whispered, "Aunt Natalie, how come you're never in the pictures with us?" I didn't know how to answer. How do you explain adult cruelty to a kindergartner? I'm usually the one taking the photos, I lied. Someone has to be behind the camera. Sophie looked at me with those big brown eyes that saw everything, and I could tell she didn't believe me. But she was too young to push back, and I was too tired to fight a battle I knew I couldn't win. As Sophie grew up, so did her awareness. She started making a point to take selfies with me at every family event, creating her own collection of photos that proved I existed. She would show them to me later, scrolling through her phone with pride. "See, Aunt Natalie? We're making our own album. A real one." She was the only Brennan who made me feel like I mattered. The only one who saw me as a person instead of a problem. When she turned 18 and announced she was going to nursing school, I wasn't surprised. Sophie had always had a healer's heart. When she graduated top of her class 4 years later, I was in the audience, crying with pride. And when she called me 6 months ago to tell me she was engaged, I was the first person she told, even before her own mother. "I want you to come to my wedding, Aunt Natalie," she said. "And I mean really come. Not sit in the back. Not disappear during photos. I want you front and center." My throat tightened. "Sophie, you know how your grandmother is. I don't want to cause drama on your special day." "You won't be causing anything. Grandma will." Her voice was steel wrapped in silk. "I've watched her treat you like you're invisible for my entire life. That ends at my wedding. I have a plan, and I need you to trust me." I didn't know what she was planning. But I trusted her. The wedding was held at a restored barn venue outside Minneapolis on a perfect September afternoon. 200 guests filled white wooden chairs arranged on a manicured lawn. Fairy lights twinkled in the rafters. Wildflower arrangements burst from mason jars. Everything was rustic and romantic and exactly what Sophie had dreamed of since she was a little girl drawing wedding dresses in her notebooks. I arrived early, as instructed. Sophie had arranged for accessible parking right next to the venue entrance, and when I wheeled myself inside, a coordinator was waiting to escort me to my seat. "Ms. Brennan? Sophie asked me to make sure you're comfortable in the front row." She was very specific about the placement. Front row. My heart hammered. I couldn't remember the last time I'd been in the front row of anything. The ceremony was beautiful. Sophie floated down the aisle like something out of a fairy tale, her arm linked with her father's. She married a young doctor named James who looked at her like she hung the moon. They wrote their own vows, and there wasn't a dry eye in the house. Through it all, I could feel my mother's gaze burning into the back of my head. She was seated in the second row, directly behind me, and I knew she was furious about the seating arrangement. But she couldn't say anything, not here, not now, not at her granddaughter's wedding. After the ceremony, everyone moved to the reception tent for cocktail hour. I mingled as best I could, accepting compliments on my dress, making small talk with relatives I saw once a year. My mother avoided me entirely, which was fine. I had learned long ago that her absence was preferable to her presence. Then the photographer appeared. His name was Marcus, and he was a tall black man with locks pulled back in a neat ponytail and a camera that looked like it cost more than my car. Sophie had hired him specifically. She told me later that she had interviewed 11 photographers before finding one who understood exactly what she wanted. "Attention, everyone." Marcus called out, his voice cutting through the chatter. "We're going to do formal family portraits in about 15 minutes. I need all immediate family members to gather by the old oak tree. That includes grandparents, parents, siblings, aunts, and uncles. Everyone." My stomach dropped. This was the moment I had been dreading. 20 years of exclusion had taught me exactly how this would go. My mother would find an excuse. I would be shuffled to the side. The photos would be taken without me, and life would continue as it always had. I started to will myself toward the back of the crowd, already planning my escape. "Aunt Natalie. Where are you going?" Sophie appeared at my side, her wedding dress somehow still pristine despite hours of hugging and dancing. She grabbed the handles of my wheelchair before I could protest. "I'm coming with you," I said weakly. "I'll stay out of the way." "You're not staying out of anything." Her voice was firm. "Your family. You belong in these photos. And anyone who says otherwise can leave my wedding." She wheeled me toward the oak tree, where Marcus was already arranging people. My mother was there, directing traffic as usual, positioning Danielle's family in what she clearly considered the optimal formation. "Danielle, you stand here with the twins. David, behind your wife. Mother, father, you're in the center, obviously. And we'll need Sophie and James right in front." Actually, Marcus interrupted, "The bride gave me very specific instructions for the arrangement." My mother turned, her smile frozen. "I'm sorry?" Marcus pulled out a laminated card from his pocket. Sophie provided a diagram. She was quite detailed about where everyone should stand. He looked directly at me. "Ms. Natalie Brennan? You're in the center front. Right next to the bride and groom." The silence that fell over my family was deafening. My mother's face went through several colors, pink, red, white, then a mottled purple I had never seen before. "There must be some mistake. Natalie can't be in the center. The wheelchair will block everyone behind her." "There's no mistake, ma'am." Marcus's voice was pleasant but immovable. "The bride specifically requested this arrangement. She wants her Aunt Natalie front and center in every formal portrait." "That's ridiculous. Sophie doesn't understand how photography works. The composition will be completely off. We need to, Grandma." Sophie's voice cut through the argument like a knife. She stepped forward, still holding my wheelchair handles, and positioned me exactly where Marcus had indicated, dead center, right in front of where she and James would stand. "Aunt Natalie is staying exactly where she is. And if you have a problem with that, you're welcome to remove yourself from the photo." My mother's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "Sophie, honey, I'm just trying to help. The photos will look strange with the wheelchair in the middle." People will notice my aunt, who I love, who has supported me my entire life, who was the first person I called when I got engaged. Sophie's voice was rising now, carrying across the lawn. Guests were starting to turn and stare. You know what else people will notice, Grandma? 20 years of family photos where Aunt Natalie mysteriously doesn't appear. 20 years of you cutting her out because you think her wheelchair ruins the aesthetic. The color drained from my mother's face. Sophie, lower your voice. No. I'm done being quiet about this. Sophie turned to face the gathered crowd, all 200 guests, now watching in rapt silence. When I was 5 years old, I asked my aunt why she was never in our family pictures. She told me she was always behind the camera. But that was a lie. She was behind the camera because my grandmother put her there. Because my grandmother decided that her own daughter's disability was something to be ashamed of. Something to hide. Tears were streaming down my face. I wanted to stop her, wanted to tell her this wasn't necessary, but I couldn't speak. For 20 years, my aunt has shown up to every family event knowing she would be erased from the record. For 20 years, she has watched her own mother treat her like she doesn't exist. And for 20 years, she never complained. She never made a scene. She never demanded better. Sophie's voice cracked. Well, I'm demanding it now. Today. At my wedding. Because my Aunt Natalie deserves to be seen. She deserves to be remembered. And she deserves to be in the damn photo. The applause started somewhere in the back. It spread like wildfire, 200 guests clapping and cheering, some of them wiping their own tears. James stepped forward and took Sophie's hand, looking at her with absolute adoration. And my mother stood frozen, her carefully constructed facade crumbling in front of everyone she had ever tried to impress. She tried to leave. I'll give her that much credit, she attempted to salvage her dignity by walking away. But my father, who had been silent for 20 years, finally spoke. Barbara. Stay. My mother turned. Richard, I will not stand here and be humiliated. You humiliated yourself. His voice was quiet but devastating. You humiliated yourself every time you pushed our daughter out of a photograph. You humiliated yourself every time you made her feel like she didn't belong in her own family. I should have said something years ago. I was a coward. But I'm saying it now. Stay, apologize, and be in this photo with your daughter. Or leave, and don't bother coming to any family event ever again. I had never heard my father speak to my mother that way. In 40 years of marriage, he had always deferred to her, always kept the peace, always let her have her way. Not anymore. My mother looked around at the crowd, at the guests who were staring at Danielle who was studying her shoes. At Sophie who stood defiant and radiant at me sitting in my wheelchair with tears streaming down my face. And then something broke. Her shoulders slumped. Her perfect posture crumbled. And for the first time in my memory, my mother started to cry. I'm sorry, she whispered. Natalie, I'm so sorry. She walked toward me slowly, like she was approaching a wild animal she had wounded. When she reached my chair, she knelt down, actually knelt, her expensive dress pressing into the grass, and took my hands. I was wrong. I was so wrong. I was ashamed and scared, and instead of dealing with my own feelings, I took them out on you. I told myself I was protecting you, but I was only protecting myself. From having to accept that my daughter's life didn't turn out the way I planned. From having to explain to people why you were in a wheelchair. From having to admit that I was a terrible mother. She was sobbing now, her makeup ruined, her dignity abandoned. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I see you. I've always seen you. I was just too much of a coward to show it. I looked at this woman, this small, broken woman who had caused me so much pain, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But release. Get up, Mom, I said softly. We have a photo to take. Marcus arranged us exactly as Sophie had specified. I was in the center front, my wheelchair positioned on a slight angle that actually looked elegant in the frame. Sophie and James stood directly behind me, their hands resting on my shoulders. My father stood to my right, and my mother, tear-streaked and humble, stood to my left. Danielle and her family filled in the sides. For the first time in 20 years, every member of the Brennan family was in the same photograph. Everyone smile, Marcus said. And I mean everyone. The camera clicked. And clicked again. And again. When it was over, Sophie leaned down and whispered in my ear, "We did it, Aunt Natalie. You're in the picture. Forever." The reception continued long into the night. I danced, yes, danced, my wheelchair spinning on the dance floor while Sophie and James twirled around me. I gave a toast that made everyone laugh and cry. I caught the bouquet, which Sophie definitely threw directly at me on purpose. And I talked to my mother. We sat together at a quiet table near the edge of the tent, two women who had been strangers for 2 decades trying to find their way back to each other. She told me about her fears, the terror she had felt when the doctors said I would never walk again, the guilt she carried for being in perfect health while her daughter was not, the shame she felt every time someone asked about me and she didn't know how to answer. "I handled everything wrong," she said. "I know that now. I thought if I didn't include you in photos, if I kept you separate from the normal parts of our life, somehow it would hurt less. But I was only hurting you more." "Yes," I said. "You were. Can you ever forgive me?" I thought about it, really thought about it. 20 years of exclusion. 20 years of being erased. 20 years of feeling like I didn't matter. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I'm willing to try." She reached out and took my hand. Her grip was tentative, uncertain, like she expected me to pull away. I didn't. A year has passed since Sophie's wedding. My relationship with my mother is still complicated. We're in therapy together, actual family therapy, something she never would have agreed to before. Some sessions are productive. Some end in tears. But we keep showing up, keep trying, keep doing the work. My father has become my unexpected ally. The man who was silent for 2 decades now calls me every Sunday just to chat. He sends me articles about disability rights. He bought a ramp for their front porch so I can visit without struggling up the stairs. Danielle and I are slowly rebuilding too. She apologized for her complicity, for all the years she went along with our mother's exclusion because it was easier than fighting. We're not close yet, but we're getting there. And Sophie, my beautiful, brave, fierce niece, just told me she's pregnant. "I'm going to be a great aunt. I want you in every photo," she said when she shared the news. "Every ultrasound, every baby shower, every birthday party. Front and center. Always." "What if your grandmother objects?" Sophie laughed. "Let her try. I've already warned Marcus to be on standby." Last month, I received a package in the mail. It was from my mother, a large, flat box with no note inside. Just a photo album. I opened it to find every family photo from the past 20 years. But these weren't the photos I remembered. In each one, there was a blank space where I should have been. And my mother had written in careful handwriting, "Natalie was here." I was wrong to exclude her. On the last page was a single photo from Sophie's wedding. All of us together. Me in the center, smiling, surrounded by family. Underneath, my mother had written, "This is how it should have been all along. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it." I cried for an hour. Then I called her and said 2 words I never thought I'd say, "Thank you." People sometimes ask me if I'm angry about the lost years. If I resent my family for treating me like I was invisible. The honest answer is, sometimes. Some days, I grieve the decades of memories I should have been part of. I mourn the woman I might have become if my family had supported me instead of hiding me. I rage at the injustice of being made to feel ashamed of a body that has carried me through 46 years of life. But most days, I choose to focus on what I have instead of what I lost. I have a niece who fought for me when I couldn't fight for myself. I have a father who finally found his voice. I have a mother who is trying, imperfectly, painfully, but genuinely trying, to make amends. And I have photos. Real photos. Photos where I'm not cropped out or pushed aside or erased from existence. Photos where I'm exactly where I belong, front and center, surrounded by the people who love me. My wheelchair isn't something to be ashamed of. It's not an aesthetic problem or a compositional challenge or an inconvenient truth. It's just part of who I am. And who I am deserves to be seen. Lesson from this story. Your worth is not determined by those who refuse to see it, and the people who truly love you will fight to make sure you never invisible again. Never let anyone convince you that you don't belong in the picture of your own life.